Over the past few weeks and months, discussions about tariffs have obviously exploded. I've been speaking to multi-million-dollar brand owners. Some are very nervous, even interested in shutting down their entire operations. And we've been talking through what we're going to do about this. My name is Jason. I'm the CEO and founder of an Amazon e-commerce company that sold over $100 million over the past decade. And we've been helping brands go through similar accessories along with many others. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the impact of tariffs, what they are, share some things from our resilient playbook, the 7 strategies that we use currently to mitigate this and also build for the long run, because these situations come and go, and what we're doing in the short term and long term to come out of this advantageous. So hopefully you can do this. So before we get into the 7 particular tactics in the resilience importing playbook, I wanted to note this, particularly go over what are tariffs and why they're so important. Tariffs are simply a tax on imported goods. They're also known as duties at times, and it's a tax that the current country you're presiding in charges different country at different rates usually, and for even different products, a tax percentage amount that you're basically pulling into your own origin country. This is obviously more prevalent now given the current administration, the tactics they're trying to deploy to optimize this, and the long-term vision that they have regarding this, which is another topic for another video. But the reason it's so relevant for us in e-commerce is that our primary cost is the inventory itself. Since we're not a service-based business, we're a product-based business, the expenses could be constituted of inventory. 40 to 80% of our expenses is usually inventory, basically. So this is where it becomes very sensitive and very, very important to watch out how this is going to increase, and very relevant for us and what the impacts it could have. It could be a deal breaker. If tariffs price is so high, it might put you out of business because you can't afford the margin to make up. Now I'm going to be sharing the 7 things that we're doing to improve and deal with the current situation from our own playbook. So the first thing, we're obviously doing an audit on our HS code. This is for the US specifically. This is a classification code they use to see the tariffs on everything. Right now, the increase in tariffs are fairly blanket, but eventually they're going to be more customized. So we want to make sure that our products are classified under the proper HS code. We're not being overcharged and a different bracket for the specific item. Even while we're doing this, we're seeing if we can reclassify our products to a different HS code level if they're like middling in between, so a different one, and customizing the product to fit that one to save if the difference of the HS code tax percentage payment is substantially different. The second thing we're focusing on is obviously the country of origin. So as I mentioned earlier in tariffs, the country you're in is charging different country, different tax percentages based on alliances, based on adversaries, etc. So the best thing you could do is obviously manufacture the product within your own country of origin. Right now in the US, we have a very weak manufacturing infrastructure. You can go to Thomas.net basically, try to see if you can find anything on that. But usually the manufacturers are less quality than any global manufacturers that you're going to see. But obviously that would be ideal if you can change us to the US. But if you can't do that US, try to look for allies. So I'm giving an example for someone that's in the US, obviously, and that's where it's relevant, but try to look for allies. That would include someone like India, Mexico. Those are good examples that have strong manufacturing that we can possibly go after. And we want to avoid the adversaries. So this would include obviously for the US, Russia, China, because the US is going to target them for a much higher tax amount than they would for have the same product, the same HS code or differentiating, but in a different country. So we have to make sure that we're aware of that unfortunate given the strength of Thailand and manufacturing and what they're doing over there. But it's something very relevant to keep in mind as you're looking at changing the country of origin or aligning your future supply chain to build around that concept. And that's what we're doing, is we're building our future supply chain manufacturing. An example of this, actually, we currently had a manufacturer that was in Canada, moved to the US because of the current, obviously, administrative changes. And then based on that move, obviously, we're no longer charging import tax because there's no import tax and you can not be imported. There's no tariffs because it's within the US. But not only that, this brand only had 2 manufactured, or this brand specifically. It was in previously Canada, now obviously the US, and the other one was China. So now we'll pocket this manufacturer that moved to the US, if he can take some of the business from our China account and see if he can produce them at a similar rate or at least competitive, and to see where that land is. The next 2 that I wanted to mention were around expenses. So obviously this is something you've always be doing anyways, but seeing where you can reduce expenses. Look at every line item, look at your price separately, look at different items to see where you can cut off expenses. And some of the things that we've been doing, for example, is consolidating shipments per country of origin to come into here. When the products come in, We analyze them appropriately. We send them to the final destination immediately. AGL helped with this. And then on the other hand of that, obviously raising your top line. So you have reduced the expenses, they also have raising your top line. So this would include basically raising prices, increasing prices gradually, which we're doing shortly right now, into doing bundle packs, increasing your average order value so that you can save some fees on Amazon. That's what we're doing. We're also bundling some items. We're pairing a virtual bundle to be able to hopefully test it out. And then whatever works out, we're going to create that as a long-term bundle. One, we could possibly classify that into a different HS code. But two, they obviously save on the Amazon fees and we save on overall expenses, but we also get a higher ticket amount on a single sale. So it's kind of a two birds in one stone, headless spec. So the next one we want to talk about is how you're tricking your product stream. There's three different ways to determine. You can watch a video on it separately, but there's DDP, XWorks, EXW, and then there's FOB. So right now we're getting a net cost from manufacturers for all three. So we're asking them for the DDP price, the EXW price, and the FOB price. And we're looking at the net cost. How much is it landed to us? So obviously they're not FOBs. They're going to give us the price. You have to top it with shipping, etc. But what is the net amount for all three scenarios? And then according to that, we might choose a different strategy. And the reason that we might get something better DDP is actually outside of some kind of the perspective. For example, China, I heard, is now starting to give incentives to manufacturers to repay the tariff. So that way the manufacturer can take advantage of that incentive and pass it down to you. So for the sixth coin, I wanted to mention inventory forecasting and buying inventory advance or out of time based. So we knew obviously with the current administration, Trump coming in, that was one of the strategies, is tariffs. So we overbought on a lot of inventory. We bought 7, 8, 9 months. Thankfully, right now we're able to sit with our hands back, and I'm going to mention later specifically what we're doing. But because you overbought, so if you know you're going to multiple scary with your specific country, that's where you can be more intelligent with inventory forecasting. Make it dynamic, not just a standard. And that's some of the stuff that we also did. And the seventh one, it's actually my favorite and it's the most long-term, is to sell globally, spend internationally. That way, at least you have better revenue streams that are more consistent. If something happens US with a tariffs and it's tumultuous time, just like you want to find a plan B supplier, you also want to find plan Bs for revenue. So purchasing and selling. And that's what we're also doing. So right now we're exploring, obviously being more enriching Amazon Canada, Amazon Europe, fortifying that to make it a more reliable revenue stream, along with other obviously marketplaces that exist. We're even exploring Mercado Libre in South Americas and what that can bring us. So a few common mistakes that I'd like to mention, and I'm seeing this very often now that I'm talking to more people about these issues. The first one is obviously waiting too long to an attempt. You know that rate change is coming. You're just sitting back. You had a chance in December to buy extra inventory. You didn't take that chance. Now you're here. You're not looking for other suppliers, not looking for other countries to manufacture, and you're not looking for other places to sell your products in. You're just sitting back. You're going to get caught. That's one thing that you definitely have to avoid, and just being proactive about it. That's what we're trying to do. The second one that I'd also seen very often is very surface level solution. And this is getting frustrating. Like, tariffs are going to come in. I'm just going to raise prices. That's going to happen. Like, it's not that simple. You can raise prices. Hopefully you still find demand. The good news is that tariffs are going to be implemented across the board. But some people are going to cheat the system. They're still going to get it at cheaper rates. You have to be more clever with this situation. You have to know that the competition isn't always going to follow. You have to understand what your competitors are doing. Are they raising prices now? Are they raising it before season? Are they gradually raising it? Is it overnight? And accordingly, you have to adjust your strategy and just understanding, not just being so basic, oh, I have $5 extra on cost and they raised my price by $6. It's a little bit more complicated than that. So the third thing that I'm also seeing commonly mistake is building your business around low mark. And this is where we run at this. It used to be like the 4 or 5% on each margin, 6-7% cut piece, one thing it'd make us happy. We're obviously changing that. Even if, like, obviously this current tariff thing is substantial, it's like hundreds of percentage points, so even it wouldn't be relevant. But realistically, it could have changed by a couple percentage points and you would have lost basically all of our margins. So right now we're focusing on building higher margin opportunities, higher margin business. That's where, for example, we're focusing more on building our brand, making the packaging look better, building the quality of the product so we can justify those higher price points, targeting a 4.5, 4.6, 4.7 star rating. You can justify that to the customer, and we have that built-in contribution margin, which will also, like a flywheel effect, will allow us to invest more in the product itself. All right, so now what are we doing here over there? Obviously, we sell 70, 80, $90 million a year. We're fixing hopefully $100 million this year. This change is substantial for us. What's our strategies? So we have a short-term and long-term. Right now, everything being so choppy, we're actually holding back on either paying new POs per additional purchase orders coming from specifically China is the main one. It looks like that's the one that the Trump is going to be targeting. So we're pausing on that a little bit more. We're also, even if we did pay for something and the inventory is ready, we're actually not shipping. Thankfully, like I said, we bought additional inventory. And even if we didn't, there's no way we can sell the inventory profitably. You'd have to double the price. So there's not enough margin. So we're just storing it by them. They're storing for free. They obviously understand the situation. You've worked from manufacturers for years. So they understand our situation. They're working with us. We're also, at the same time, taking down some PTC. We're taking down coupons. We're reducing them, artificially slow down our sales so that our inventory that we currently have can last longer and we can ride through this more smoothly. On the long term, we're building that infrastructure. We're looking for, like I said, changing the supply chain to the US or allies of the US. That's for the manufacturers, obviously, but at the same time also we're looking to expand our revenue channel. So we're looking at other items, we're looking at other locations to sell products on, marketplaces in other countries, obviously. That's for that. And then we'll also at the same time reviewing our prices. What can we raise the price on? What can we pull the quality on? Perhaps cool the quality by 20, 30 cents in R&D, but that can justify it $3, $4 in price chain. Or what can we cut down from line items, especially in the supply chain, or what can we work on this? So that's our strategy for the short term and long term. And we're obviously going to be continuously adapting this and improving it. But currently, that's where we're at. And thankfully, we're not having to do this for our entire catalog. We're only doing this for inventory that we can't obtain profitably anymore. Just as an example, we had a bassinet we used to buy for $40. We're selling it for around, I think it's like 120, very heavy item. So we're making around $20 an item after advertising everything. Now with the new tariffs, it's $80 as landed cost. So there's no way we're going to have to sell it for like $200 plus dollars. There's no market that exists for that now. So I'm looking to slow down the pace for that one, extend it a little bit longer and see what happens. Obviously, we have a lot of products needed in the USA. So those are not, we don't have to implement that strategy there. Not a blanket saying, but it's specifically for the products impacted by this that also we can't viably sell at the higher price point, or we can't marginally work for it. So you have to make sure that we protect our partners and we protect their margins to work through this as we continuously maintain their current situation. If you found this video helpful, I still recommend watching this video over here. It talks about the 3 ways that you have leakages in ad spend. Hopefully that's one thing that you can cut costs on and be able to afford put a bit of these tariffs and work through this period. If you still need help with anything, feel free to go to vidar.com, speak to an expert regarding your situation, help you more in depth, and leave a comment below, like and subscribe to see more of these videos. I'll personally sign to all the comments.